Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. Today we will find out who will be the player who will win the group and make it to the upper bracket of the next stage, because after all of the previous games that we have already seen of this group, it will now come down to the final two-player game between me and Erock. I'm still, even after my loss against Envy, still 3 points ahead of Erock in the standings, but if Erock should manage to win the last game, he finishes before me in the standings, while if I should manage to win, or if the game should end in the tie, I would be the one winning the group. So it is a very exciting finish in the group, and I hope you're excited to see this last two-player game. And now, without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. In this game, I'm playing in the first position, and first of all, we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. In the last two-player game against MV, Shakespeare played a very big part in the game, but he is not available in this game. Instead, we have Bach and Anthony Gaudi as culture leaders. We have Fleming, Chaplin in H3 as culture leaders. There's no Hollywood, but there is the internet. There's no Red Cross. There's Gandhi to hide behind. There's Churchill for the military. Marie Curie is there for some lab snotchy, but apart from her, not really any lab snotchy in H3 from the leaders. Also no spaceflight, at least the Manhattan Project is there. So in this game, it maybe might be better to rather go into theaters with Bach and Gaudi, and then maybe go for Fleming and Chaplin in H3. In H2 we have a bunch of strong wonders. We have the Suez Canal for some colonization payoff, ocean liner services there, Harvard College is there. We have both the science leaders with Nobel and Newton. We have the two military action leaders, Napoleon and Robespierre. We have no military action leader in H1, but Nostradamus and Genghis Khan to help with the strength. We have Columbus and Eleanor as transitional leaders, but maybe also to help setting up for Suez Canal. And then we have Leonardo, but no Gutenberg, and Saladin as a very solid leader. We have the two science wonders with Silk Road and Universitas, and then there's Himeji Castle but no Great Wall, and Forbidden City but no St. Peter's Basilica, and one of the wonders that isn't revealed, and there's actually only one wonder from HA on the card row, is the Acropolis. The other ones are Stonehenge and Colossus. I'm playing in first position here, and as you can see, I decided to take the only wonder that is available in the Roman roads. Of course, it could be that the Acropolis will be revealed, but I thought that it is quite likely that Erock will take Hammurabi. If he doesn't take Hammurabi, I'm very fine with getting Hammurabi together with the Roman roads. But if Erock takes Hammurabi, then I will get the Engineering Genius, and I think having the Engineering Genius together with the Roman roads and being able to build that wonder very quickly is just quite strong. So I maybe won't get the ideal leader if Erock indeed just goes for Hammurabi. Then Hippocrates stays on 2 civil actions, and I probably won't be willing to pay an additional civil action for him, and then I will maybe at the end either go for Alex or for Moses, but together with the Engineering Genius, I felt like that should be a fine outcome for me, and if I don't take the Roman roads, there also aren't really the greatest alternatives, so I think it's at the end a relatively clear Roman roads pick here. Then it's Erock's turn. As expected, he will go for Hammurabi. And that left me now with the choice of what leader do I want to go for. I certainly will take that Engineering Genius to be able to finish the Rome roads very quickly. And now, I think I'm not willing to pay an additional civil action for Hippocrates here, and then I thought about either Alex or Moses, and I at the end went with Alex, because Alex I felt like maybe allows me a potentially nice second turn, because I will already elect him, and if I use him at the next turn and get a yellow token, then I could have a nice turn, because one nice turn that I have either way is to just finish the Rome roads. That would just be a very fine turn. But what also could be nice is to use Alex at the next turn, get the additional yellow token, and then increase my population twice, build the second lab, and build the first step of the Rome roads. Instead of the additional resource production from the Rome roads, I would get the additional science, and I think that maybe the additional science is even a bit more valuable in the early game. And thanks to the additional yellow token from Alex, I can do all of this without getting into consumption. So I could spend 4 civil actions in my civilization without getting into consumption. And I think that could be a nice alternative to just finishing the Rome roads. And with that, I went for Alex. Also, there are some nice early replacement leaders like Saladin, Nostradamus, maybe Leonardo if I get an early alchemy or printing press. So at the end, I, in this situation, went for Alex. As you can see, the Acropolis was revealed, so Erock sadly will have a chance to take it. However, he will go for something different, because what you can also see is that the first card from H1 is actually the Universitas, and Erock decides to just take it here. He could have taken it for cheaper at the next turn, but the problem is he can't really spend his civil actions in a nice way. He can take frugality and patriotism, the urban growth for 2 civil actions. Those are some very inefficient civil action usages, so he just is willing to, even though he could take it for 2 civil actions cheaper the next turn, is willing to take the Universitas already, and yeah, probably it's a fine decision. And he is willing to go for the Universitas over the Acropolis, which I think is also a fine decision, even though I think it would also be fine to go for the Acropolis. At my turn, as you can see, I use Alex, and now I have to make a decision. Do I want to finish the Roman roads, or do I want to go for that building the second lab, increasing my population twice, and then using the engineering genius A on the Rome roads kind of turn? And as I said, I generally would maybe like it a bit more to go for the second lab play, because first of all, the additional science might be a little bit more valuable than the additional resource, and additionally, I would have a free population. I mean, the chance that Erok seeds is maybe not as high, but if I draw a nice event, maybe it could be nice to start pushing and make it that the event deck moves a bit quickly with playing against Hammurabi, so having a free population could be nice. But with having had Alex, I of course also want to get a new leader relatively quickly, and there's one leader already in the row, Eleanor. And Eleanor, I think, is quite a solid leader, especially in 2-player games. I'm not sure if you watched the tier lists that Daniel did on. He did some 2-player tier lists, and Eleanor he actually put an S tier in those tier lists, so that was quite interesting. But yeah, I mean, she gives a bunch of cultures, she gives important draws, she gives civil actions back in H2 when there are maybe a lot of important things to do. So I think she is quite fine. I maybe can potentially set up for a Suez Canal game. And so it would be kind of nice to maybe be able to, if Erok doesn't take her away, to take and elect Eleanor at the next turn. The thing is, if I go for the turn with building my second lab and then increasing my population twice, then in order to finish the Rome roads at the next turn, I would need to spend 3 civil actions in that, meaning I could maybe take Eleanor, but I would not have the civil action to also elect her. And with that, I at the end decided to just finish the Rome roads here, get the additional resource income, and then at the next turn I could increase my population, build the second lab, and then take and elect Eleanor and get my new leader going very quickly. And that was the reason why I was willing to maybe go for that slightly less good line. It's also, I mean, the additional resource income is not bad. I have now a lot of yellow tokens in my bank because of Alex and the Rome roads, and then I at least have the option to also get the second lab going and electing Eleanor at the next turn. I draw some cards, still no event, but a fighting band and a raid. Erok takes the engineering genius, that's sadly quite a strong card for him with the Universitas. With that he will be able to already finish the Universitas at the next turn if he wants to. He also takes the swordsman to have a military technology. As you can see, there are actually also some other leaders coming down the row. Columbus, who is maybe not that interesting, as I rather want to have a leader who is giving me some value immediately, with having had Alex. But there's Saladin. And if Saladin would be on 1 civil actions, especially if he isn't in a discard spot, I maybe would take Saladin over Eleanor here, because at this early point in the game, the additional civil action that I would get immediately is, I think, still just quite strong. But the thing is, I could take and elect him, and I could get out of corruption by building a warrior, but I really didn't want to build a warrior here. I really didn't want to go for that kind of line. I mean, maybe it could be fine. But I, with Eleanor being available for civil action cheaper, instead decided to go for Eleanor. If I take Saladin, then also the breakthrough falls down to 1 civil action for Erok. He can maybe go for just a leader like Nostradamus later on. He is perfectly fine with having Hammurabi for now, so while Saladin is of course strong for him, I don't think it would be bad for him if I take him away, and he could go maybe for Leonardo, Nostradamus later on, and just keep Hammurabi, who is basically giving him something similar. Saladin, of course, slightly less good, but something similarly good, and then he can just go for another strong leader later on. So I didn't think I need to deny Saladin here, and for myself, I just felt like Eleanor is better here, because then I don't have to build a warrior to get out of corruption. So I increased my population, I took and elected Eleanor, And then my first instinct was to build the second lab, but the thing is there's a copy of alchemy and a copy of printing press coming down the row, so in the end I rather decided to increase my population to get out of corruption, and then at the next turn if the alchemy is available I can build an alchemy directly, or if the alchemy is taken away I can also still go into printing presses. There's no Shakespeare, but printing presses are quite decent in two-player games even without a big synergy, and there's at least Anthony Gaudi and Fleming and the internet, so I think there are still some synergies for the printing press, and it also could be very fine, and with that I decided to not commit to the second lab yet, with having those interesting options available for me at the next turn. I skipped the irrigation, which can of course backfire, but at least it's unclear whether I or Irok will be the one to take it. Irok of course for now has still Hammurabi, has an additional civil action, but I at least have 2 additional yellow tokens and might have a decent amount of population because of that anyway, and with that I was willing to skip the irrigation here. I discard 2 cards, scoring my first 2 culture with Eleanor. I do draw 1 event, however it's quite an influential one, the Uncertain Borders. Irok Seeds, the development of crafts are revealed. I have now quite a lot of resources stored up. Irok can this turn finish the Universitas thanks to the Engineering Genius 1. He will go for Saladin, so replaces Hammurabi, increases his population and then takes the Warfare interestingly. And then at my turn, I of course had to think about if I want to seed the Uncertain Borders. First I thought, well, I'm Eleanor, I just want to push. But Irok has already the Swordsman in hand, the Warfare in hand. I don't know if or when I will get the second copy of Swordsman. And I just felt a bit uncomfortable seeding a strength event here against Irok, especially such an influential one. And also if some additional resources are revealed, then I really might have some corruption issues. So at the end I decided that I don't want to commit to the Uncertain Borders here in the situation, and I sadly decided to pass on seeding here with Eleanor. Then it's the question whether I want to go for Alchemy or Printing Press, and with not the biggest Printing Press synergy being the game, I rather went for the Alchemy. Also going for the Alchemy helps me getting out of corruption if I just build 2 Printing Presses, for example, which would be quite nice also to get the culture income going, but I would still be in corruption, and so I rather went for the more economical play, went for the Alchemy, developed it. I built one that's not enough to get me out of corruption, but I can also upgrade one. I still have a free population thanks to my 2 additional yellow tokens. I'm still even 2 yellow tokens away from consumption, and I have now quite some nice science income going, so I thought it's just quite a strong turn, and I was willing to go for that. I actually discard the Uncertain Borders, I draw the Crusades, that's maybe a bit of a less influential event, and with that maybe I will be able to push at the next turn with Eleanor. Irok goes for the Silk Road, so he will have both Universitas and Silk Road, 2 quite some strong wonders. He will have some very decent science income, which is certainly quite strong, and I was a bit worried about the setup, but maybe I can then go for something like Forbidden City or Amici Castle, which are also strong wonders. He will increase his population, develops the Warfare interestingly. With that I was even more happy that I didn't commit to the Uncertain Borders, because now Irok is already 1 strength stronger, and I would need to go a little bit out of my way in order to make sure to be stronger, and so yeah, I was fine about my decision of not having pushed the Uncertain Borders here. With Irok taking not any cards from a non-discard spot, the Iron sadly stays on 2 civil actions for me, and if I don't take it, then Irok might have the chance to deny the Iron from me, so at the next turn I have to think about whether I want to take the Iron. Also, again, I have to think about seeding. Again, I felt not too comfortable about being the strongest, but the Crusades is, of course, it's an event that should not be underestimated in 2-player games. It's quite a big swing, so maybe I should again not push, but I still have a chance to get stronger at least, and for that event I was willing to take the risk, and I decided to push. I draw the Call to Arms in the Historic Territory, Development of Planning is revealed. The options for the Development of Planning are Development of Market, Settlement and Warfare. I will go for the Development of Settlement. That development will actually help me getting out of corruption. Before that it was actually a bit tricky, but now I can take the Iron. If I would have now gained a bit of science from the development, I would have very much thought about developing the Iron and actually building a 4th Iron mine and getting out of corruption and going up to 6 resource income. I think that would have been quite strong, but there hasn't been any additional science revealed, but at least the Development of Settlement allows me to take the Iron and then increase my population twice, and thanks to being 1 step ahead in my yellow bank, thanks to the development of settlement, the last population increase costs now 3 food instead of only 2, and that additional food that I can spend allows me to very cleanly get out of corruption. And I could have, of course, skipped the iron. At least Irok would have to pay an additional civil actions to get the iron, but he still needs to pay an additional civil action here. If I now let the iron stay also in 2 civil actions for him. And I just felt like I have a lot of resources to invest in, and now having maybe the option of just going for 3 iron upgrades even at the next turn is just so strong that I didn't want to miss out on the iron here, and I was willing to take it for 2. I, at the end of my turn, will reveal the fighting band tactic to have that available, and I will keep an event and a colonization card. I keep the historic territory, the developed territory I draw, so I have now some colonies available. There is a Suez Canal in there. Irok Seeds and the development of agriculture has been revealed. He takes the iron for an additional civil action and will start upgrading to it, and then he takes the drama, which can be useful for some of those cultural leaders. Now it's my turn. I decided to push the historic territory into the deck, and the event revealed is the development of civil life, which actually allows me to develop the iron at a 1 science discount, which is quite nice. And then I decided to actually just go for 3 iron upgrades. About my last civil action, I'm not really sure if I did the right decision, because I made a call here to just increase my population. And I think maybe I should actually take the monarchy here, because if I don't take the monarchy, I might just be stuck on despotism. And it might be fine, because what not taking the monarchy does is that the code of laws stay in 3 civil actions. Additionally, the last copy of irrigation stays on 2 civil actions. So those were the reasons why I didn't want to go for the monarchy. But it's a bit dangerous in 2-player games to not have any H1 government form, because the H2 government forms can be late, can be denied, and so maybe I should just take the monarchy, especially because the additional military action is also quite nice to have with Eleanor. But then again, irrigation drops to 1, code of laws drops to 2 for Irok. I mean, maybe taking both of those cards is still somewhat expensive for him. And with both of those cards dropping for 1 civil action cheap, I think I can still understand my decision, especially with getting the code of laws. I at least will be able to go up to 5 civil actions, and while I will be stuck maybe in 2 military actions for a little bit longer, I at least will be on 5 civil actions, and if I then get an H2 government form, that might be quite nice. So I'm still not sure if I should go for taking the monarchy here, if I should just wait for the code of laws. In the game I decided to wait for the code of laws and let the irrigation also stay on 2 civil actions for Irok, which I think is a fine call, but it is just a bit risky not having any government form, and the additional military action could have been quite nice for Eleanor. Now I have to, for example, discard a colonization card. I mean, I would have to discard it also if I take the monarchy in hand, but soon I might be able to keep such cards, and especially with me having seeded a colony and with the Suez Canal being in there, it might be quite worthwhile being able to keep some more colonization cards in hand, for example. I draw the Rebellion and the Scientific Breakthrough. Irok Seeds, and sadly there's a strength event also from him in the deck, the Foray, which sadly gives him a bit of an economical boost. He decides to take 3 resources and no food from it. He actually uses the development of civil life to build a religion, interestingly, and then he goes for a bunch of iron upgrades, takes breakthrough, patriotism, and a monarchy. At the next turn is just enough civil actions and resources to finish the Silk Road if he wants to. Now it is my turn. H2 starts. I seed the Scientific Breakthrough into the deck. The Good Harvest is revealed. I draw the Autonomous Territory, which is an important draw, because there's the Suez Canal in the game. If I should be able to win the Historic Territory 1 that I've seeded into the deck, then the Suez Canal might be quite a strong wonder for me. So I kind of wanted to keep that in hand, but now again there is the downside of me being on such low military actions, because it's not that easily possible for me to keep the Autonomous Territory, with maybe also wanting to keep seedable events and also wanting to keep colonization cards for the Historic Territory. I this turn went for the Code of Laws. I think I have to go for that. I can't allow myself to be stuck on 4 civil actions. And then I first thought, okay, well, I will take 1 more card and then increase my population to get out of corruption. So that was my first idea. But there are 2 cards that I kind of really would like to have. There is the Masonry, that I really didn't want to give Iraq with having the Silk Road, and the thing is, you might argue that, well, he wants maybe to go for the monarchy as a full hand, but the thing is, if he builds the first step, then develops the monarchy, with the breakthrough using the Silk Road bonus, he afterwards has enough science left to take and develop the masonry and finish the Silk Road with the masonry, so I really didn't want to give him the masonry. But there's also the irrigation, the last copy, and having that available is just quite strong, not being dependent on selective breeding. If I get the ocean liner service, that works very well together with the irrigation. So with me already potentially being cut off a government farm or really needing a government farm, I didn't want to also be in a position to maybe having to spend lots of actions to get a source for population income. On the other hand, you might of course argue that I have already a lot of population, but still I at some point will need more population income. And of course, if I take two cards, then I have some corruption issues, but I came to the conclusion that it is maybe actually not that bad anyway to just build two more warriors here, which makes me stronger, so I have a chance to win the crusades that I have seeded, and also I can maybe send an army or potentially even more away for the historic territory, so that I'm prepared for the Suez Canal, with me having the autonomous territory in hand. And so at the end I was actually fine to take both masonry and the irrigation and build two warriors to get out of corruption, which of course costs me some draws, but I get stronger. Maybe Iraq has to respond now in any kind of form. Maybe he has to sacrifice a civil action with Saladin to get stronger again. If not, I might have a chance to win the crusades. And if he gets stronger, I might just cede anyway, and then the historic territory might be revealed. And I maybe can bid more thanks to having built those units, and might have a chance to go for Suez Canal then. So yeah, with that I at the end thought it's maybe not too bad to build two warriors anyway, and then I can also just take both the cards that I want here. But now it's a difficult question on what should I discard at the end of my turn, because with the Suez Canal in there I really wanted to keep the autonomous territory, but if I keep the autonomous territory and a defense card, which I will, of course, kind of would like to keep because of the historic territory coming, then I can't really push, because I, of course, want to keep the autonomous territory in hand. And so at the end I decided to keep the popularization of science and the autonomous territory. Of course, losing the defense card is bad, but if I can't push it my turn, then I might just be at a disadvantage if the colony is revealed on Iraq's turn and he wins the tiebreaker, so at least I can push now at my turn, and if the colony is revealed I win the tiebreaker, which kind of makes up for me missing the defense card, and I can just continue seeding. There's also a chance that I seed and immediately draw an H2 defense card, which increases my chances to win the colony, and so I kept those two cards, but we can already see that maybe having a third military action with Eleanor could have been quite nice. Now it's Iraq's turn. He doesn't see it, sadly. I was hoping that he might just push, because I, at the beginning of that event deck, was just weaker and let him win the forays. I thought maybe he doesn't really think that there's a strength event coming, but of course I built those warriors, which might be explained by getting out of corruption, so I was hoping that he might think, oh, he probably just did that to get out of corruption and not because he wants to get stronger, but he is actually willing to do some investment here. He isn't going for the monarchy, instead develops the swordsman with the breakthrough, but the reason why he's doing that is that the republic is on the row, and he rather wants to have the republic than the monarchy here, which I think is perfectly understandable with him having the warfare already. And he has also enough science to develop the Republic at the next turn, thanks to using the breakthrough with the Silk Road bonus. And with having now developed those swordsmen, he sadly can also use those to get stronger again relatively easily. At least he has corruption. Now it is my turn. I could just push if the historic territory is on top. At least I might still have a somewhat decent chance to win it. But the thing is, my plan this turn was to finish the Michi Castle anyway. And then I get stronger again. I felt like, at least maybe Iraq then maybe wants to push, or at least he has to put some effort again into getting stronger. And maybe then there is actually only the colony in top for now. So I decided to not push here. Take the Meiji Castle, develop the masonry, finish the Meiji Castle, and then I take the cultural heritage. Not sure about the last decision, maybe I could also just increase my population, but I ideally still need the constitutional monarchy, and then some additional science might actually still be useful. For example, if I at the next turn decide to start going for irrigation farms, and then the cultural heritage will make the difference between being able to go for the common in 2 turns or not. Or is it actually the case? Yes, because I'm at 9 at the next turn. If I invest 3, I'm at 6, and then plus 5 is 11, and thanks to the cultural heritage, I would now be at 12 plus. So I thought that card has the potential to make quite a difference. Some additional science is useful anyway, so I was at the end willing to take the cultural heritage here. Thanks to the Meiji Castle, I'm again stronger. I have now a bit of culture income. The Meiji Castle protects me, and as soon as we are entering age 3, the Roman roads will switch to culture as well. And then I just have a very solid amount of base culture income just thanks to my wonders, which I think can be quite strong, especially in 2-player games. I let the Rifleman stay on 2 civil actions for Iraq, but I actually draw the Hussar, so I might not need the Rifleman as much. Iraq develops the Republic. And here you can see what happens. He takes the constitutional monarchy, so he denies me from a government form, meaning I will be stuck on despotism for quite a while longer, and I have to hope for an early age 3 government form. So now I'm, maybe really get punished for not taking the monarchy earlier on. I already could have really used the additional military actions from the monarchy, and now I also will be stuck on despotism for even longer. So I was not too happy about this. At least Iraq has to do a bit of an investment. He has to spend 3 civil actions just taking that away. He has to delay the Silk Road again, so there's a bit of a cost involved for him. But now I think it's still the right thing for him to do, especially with having that many civil actions now. He then also takes the breakthrough, and with having a Legion tactic and the Swordsman, he sadly is now again clearly the strongest. And with me not really planning to get stronger this turn anyway, I decided to push. Maybe I get lucky and the historic territories on top, and at this point I just also kind of needed to accept that I probably won't be the one winning the Crusades. So I decided to push the popularization of science into the deck. The Crusades are revealed, so sadly there's a bit of a culture swing. Iraq has now a small culture lead already, even though I will get some culture at the end of my turn with the discard from Eleanor. I this turn develop the irrigation. I just want to get some food income going. And interestingly though, I actually go for only 1 upgrade. I don't remember exactly my reason why I didn't go for a second upgrade. Instead of, for example, increasing my population, or instead of one of those yellow cards. I do think that I was eyeing that Harvard College that is coming down the row. I could very nicely use the Engineering Genius and the Masonry on that wonder, go for a lot of science income, which then again might help me going into an age 3 government form, which I desperately need, and which I also kind of have to hope for now, that one will be available early. And what I was maybe also thinking about with only going for 1 upgrade is that there's an ocean liner service in the game, and if I should be able to take the ocean liner, and Iraq at the moment has still the Silk Road lying around, so there's maybe a chance that I will be able to take the ocean liner service, then I maybe don't need a lot of farm upgrades that urgently, and actually increasing my population now makes it that if the ocean liner service is in the 3 civil action area the next turn, which would mean that I have to spend my whole turn taking it, now thanks to having increased the population instead of maybe having gone for the second upgrade and not increasing my population, would make it that I can take it and don't have any corruption issues. Of course I could have still also skipped one of those yellow cards, but I didn't really want to give the revolutionary idea to Iraq, and it might also still be a useful card for me, because in order to go for an age 3 government form I will need a lot of science. And the Engineering Genius I also felt useful, because I was still hoping for Suez Canal, Ocean Liner Service, or if none of those is available the next turn I might also just take and finish the Harvard College. So at the end I think it is somewhat fine, but when I took a look at the replay I was a bit confused first why I didn't go for the second upgrade, but I think there are some valid reasons. As you can see, I actually skipped the Rifleman. I have the Hussars in hand, however that copy of Cavalryman will now land in the discard spot, so there is some risk involved into what I'm doing here, and maybe I could have also taken the Rifleman, or maybe taken 1 less card so that the Cavalryman isn't on the discard spot. I was just hoping that Iraq might take the Cavalryman anyway, and that I have a chance to get the second copy then, but there is some risk involved, and that's of course a bit dangerous. With me really wanting to keep the tactic and the autonomous territory, I am now was hoping to draw a seedable event. Sadly I don't draw one, at least I draw a colonization card, but at the next turn I either have to push the autonomous territory into the deck, meaning that I don't have it available for the Suez, or I can't use Eleanor's ability, sadly, to draw additional cards. Now it's Iraq's turn, he seeds, the historic territory is revealed, and I was quite happy to see that I actually win it for very cheap. Iraq hasn't found a source of additional population income yet, And because of that, maybe he wasn't willing to bid for that. But I do think the 6 culture in 2-player games is also somewhat relevant. And now I get it for very cheap. I was actually willing. I might have actually been willing to go for all of my warriors because I thought it might just be very strong winning that, getting the culture, being prepared for the Suez Canal. So I at the end was very happy that I actually win it for very cheap. And maybe Iraq should have bid a little bit at least for that colony, but maybe he felt like he doesn't have the population for it. But at least he would get a happy face, then that population would be freed and he could at least rebuild a unit. I win the colony for just a warrior. Iraq finishes the Silk Road, develops the drama. With the Silk Road bonus he actually generates a science by that, basically. Then he takes the reserves, the cavalryman, and the efficient upgrade. I was happy to see that he takes the cavalryman so that I don't have to fight over the second copy and can just take it when it will be available. Now it's an interesting turn, and what will be revealed now in the row will also influence my politics phase, because as you can see I actually pushed the autonomous territory into the deck, and the reason why I do that is that the ocean liner service is in the row, and I really felt like I can't give this ocean liner service to Iraq. He has so many civil actions, he can relatively easily finish it, and he still needs some population income. The selective breeding maybe could be late, and yeah, I think I have to go for that ocean liner service. While it costs me a lot of civil actions to take it, at least I have the masonry, so it doesn't cost me as many to finish it. And with me taking the ocean liner service now, which makes it a lot harder to also go for the Suez Canal, I at the end was willing to push the autonomous territory. It's maybe a bit risky at the moment. I have only 2 military actions. I don't know how nicely I will be able to keep defense cards in hand, but I just, yeah. It's some time until then. I have knowledge about it. I can maybe prepare myself to win it. Hopefully I might have a chance to get the strategy, which Iraq maybe doesn't want to take with having the warfare. And so I was willing to push that into the deck. The event revealed is the scientific breakthrough. And then I just take the ocean liner service. What I could have done here is to take Anthony Gaudi, elect him, and then take the ocean liner service. That could have been a possible play. But Anthony Gaudi is giving me only 1 culture at the moment. I actually gain more culture just by discarding. The problem is, of course, the other leaders are not showing themselves in the card row. And of course, I want to replace Eleanor before the age ends to get the additional civil action back. But yeah, Anthony Gaudi, the first opera would be gone. I mean, I might be able to go for journalism, maybe it could be fine, but I rather wanted to leave myself open for Bach, even with the danger of me missing out on the second copy of Opera, but just being able to deny him from Iraq, who has the drama already ready to, already developed. And if I don't get Bach, maybe there are some other leaders like Newton or Bell that all could be fine. And I was just hoping that at the next turn there will some leaders be available, because that could be annoying. Of course, losing Eleanor to the end of the age, and because of that I considered just taking and electing Gordian afterwards, taking the ocean liner service, but at the end I was not convinced by it, and at the end just took the ocean liner service. I keep the Hussars and the colonization card. I again have to discard another colonization card, and with the autonomous territory coming, that's of course really bad, but I immediately draw another colonization card. Iraq seeds and the reds are revealed, so me not upgrading an additional farm actually gets rewarded now by me losing less food. And also I was able to take the ocean liner service without having corruption issues. Sadly, the selective breeding is revealed, and sadly there's no leader yet revealed, so I was really afraid that there might be no leaders at my turn, or if there are any, that I have to really pay for them, so that I was not too happy to see. And I also was not too happy to see the selective breeding. Of course, it's now relatively late, and it would also be somewhat unfortunate for Iraq, but if the selective breeding would just be a little bit later in the deck, then I think Iraq might really struggle to maybe use the civil actions efficiently this turn, because he might just end up having to take a bunch of cards from the row. I mean, he could maybe take and develop architecture, probably would be able to do some stuff, but now he can just spend his turn very nicely to go for 2 upgrades to selective breeding, fix his food income, also just after the reds have been revealed, so very nice timing, very nicely timed from him, that event. And then he takes the organized religion and builds a drama to go up to 6 culture income. With that, I have a small lead again thanks to the culture from the discard from Eleanor, but Iraq is again starting to catch up. And also, of course, because I won the historic territory, that was the main thing why I have a lead now. I was now really hoping that there might be some leaders revealed, otherwise Irok might be able to end the age and I don't get civil actions from Eleanor back. And I also was kind of hoping that maybe Bach could be in the row, so that I could take Bach and deny him from Irok. There's no Bach on the row, but there is actually no Bell on the row. But I still had to think about, do I want to commit to Nobel or do I rather want to wait for Bach? The thing is, I don't have a copy of opera for Bach myself yet, and at least Bach is somewhat late. At least Irok has already developed a drama, so he doesn't get a science discount. And at the end, I felt like getting the additional civil actions back from Eleanor was just too important. Of course, I have to pay now a lot of civil actions for my leader, but I also get the benefit of the leader. And the additional science will also translate in a bit of additional culture, because one of those H2 events is actually the popularization of science. And the additional strength also will be useful, as we will see during this turn. However, one thing won't be possible for me to do, because if I don't take Nobel, I thought about just taking and developing strategy and then finishing the ocean liner service without using the engineering genius, which is maybe a bit bad anyway. Maybe I should now be willing to sacrifice the civil action. And now after electing Nobel, have only 4 civil actions, so I can't take and develop the strategy and finish the ocean liner service. And I felt like I really, really need to take and develop the strategy, because I need the additional military actions. I need to be able to keep the tactic and the 2 defense cards in hand with the autonomous territory coming. I think that's of utmost importance here. And so I will now go for developing the strategy. I delay the ocean liner service, at least leaving myself the door open to finish it with using the engineering genius. And after developing the strategy, I decided to actually just build a 4th mine. Because even without having finished the ocean liner service yet, I still have a decent amount of population available. And as soon as I finish it, I just thought I will have a very nice amount of population available. And while Irok might now be the one to get Bach, at least I maybe have a bit of a superior economy with having Nobel, with being now at 8 resource income, with having the ocean liner service, which might still be a bit better than just the selective breeding income. Of course, Irok has still a lot more civil actions, which is why I was really, really hoping for an early H3 government form. If I don't get that, things could be looking a bit bad, but if I should get an early H3 government form, then together with my maybe now superior economy, I felt like I might be in a position to compete with Bach, especially also Rome Road switching to culture income soon, and maybe me then also just going for one of those H3 cultural leaders as soon as I get a chance. And so I was kind of happy about this idea of building the 4th iron mine, and I think with having already some free population, it's maybe fine to delay the ocean liner service by 1 more turn. Also, the cavalrymen don't land on the discard spot. If cannons and cavalrymen would be the other way around, it could be quite a bit annoying. But luckily, they aren't in the discard spot. And also thanks to the additional strength from Nobel and the strategy, I'm now stronger. Irok has pushed 1 event in there, and I felt like, who knows? He has committed to other strength events, maybe he has also seeded an H2 strength event, and now I can maybe see, depending on how he reacts, if I maybe have to expect a strength event coming. I draw some events so I can push it the next turn. Irok seeds. The popularization of science is revealed, so it gives me a bit of additional culture, which is nice. At least I thought that at the time when it was revealed. We will, however, see soon that is a bit of a double-edged sword, and it actually, in hindsight, would have rather replaced it with any kind of neutral event, but we will see that at my turn. Yeah, I gain 2 additional culture. Irok goes for the organized religion, goes for the cavalryman, plays the patriotism 1 with the Silk Road bonus, upgrades the temple, builds the cavalryman, takes the frugality, plays the reserves for food, and then he actually reveals the classic army tactic using a free military action. It makes him stronger, makes him weaker. He was stronger before, so that's of course a very, very big sign that that event is no strength event. And maybe he even wants me to see it. But I guess he's just fine with not getting stronger and using his military action sufficiently, and it's of course now a clear sign that there is no strength event coming. At least the H ends, Bach hasn't been on the row, so at least Irok will be getting Bach quite late. Now it is my turn, I'm stronger, I want to get an event in there. First I thought I want to push the crime wave, because I might want to try to be stronger anyway, but for now I haven't pushed any strength event yet. I really want to try winning the autonomous territory, even maybe at the cost of quite some units, which could make it that I'm weaker. And also Irok has the classic army, he soon might just build one more cavalryman, and then it's already a bit difficult for me to actually get stronger. So after thinking about it, I felt like freedom of movement is clearly the better event here, especially as it might also allow me to put a warrior into cavalryman and prepare for the hussars tactic. So I see it. First of all, H3 starts. I sadly lose the cultural heritage, so that at the end was not the greatest pick. And the terrorism is revealed. And when we take a look at the culture overview, I and Irok are actually tied. So yeah, that was extremely close. Irok took a bit of a risk with the terrorism, but sadly at the end was able to make it work. And the reason why it worked for him at the end is the two additional culture that I got from the popularization of science, because at the last turn Irok, I don't think there was any nice way for him to sabotage his own culture income. He would have need to destroy a drama or do some crazy stuff that would never be worth it. And so if the popularization of science would just be any kind of neutral event that doesn't result in me getting two additional culture, then Iraq couldn't really do a lot about not winning the terrorism. So in hindsight, I was now very unhappy about the popularization of science and about Nobel giving me two additional culture for that, because sadly Iraq will now be able to destroy an alchemy, which is of course a bit of a swing. Maybe I can just put it into something like multimedia or movies if those things are available early, but still I rather would have kept the alchemy, of course, especially because I hopefully should have enough population for quite a while to support it. So I was quite unhappy about this terrorism and how extremely close it was. But yeah, Iraq was brave enough to see that. I'm not sure if he maybe pushed it before the Crusades were revealed, but I think, I mean, maybe. We would have to take a look back if he already at that point seeded an H2 event. Maybe we can do it very quickly. I think it should be possible to find it out quickly. I finished the Michi Castle, I opened the Crusades, and I guess now, after he won the Crusades, he seeded a terrorism. Now it might also be clear why he actually didn't bid for the historic territory. I mean, I knew, of course, when I took a look at the replay that the terrorism was coming, but it hasn't yet entered my mind that that was actually the reason why he maybe just passed on that. And maybe that should have already given me a hint, but at the point when he passed, I felt like I might just think that he is too low in population. But yeah, it was already a hint for the terrorism that was coming. Interesting. So yeah, nonetheless, I have to of course accept that I will lose this alchemy, and then during my turn I will decide to use the engineering genius in the ocean liner, because it's just very unclear if I would be able to use it at all, and getting 4 resources for 1 civil action I think is still quite a nice deal. I can then finish the ocean liner service, get an additional population, and with my last actions I will just take and develop the cavalryman, building 1, using the 1 free military action that I'm having, getting stronger in case Irok has seeded any strength related into the deck, and also making it that I have a nice target for the freedom of movement that I've put into the deck, so that I can reroute a warrior into cavalryman. So that felt like a relatively decent turn, with the one big downside that I don't take the opera here. So I really thought about if I maybe shouldn't use the engineering genius, or maybe shouldn't go for the cavalryman to secure myself that copy of opera. But at this point I gave myself into the hands at the mercy of the H3 cards, hoping that any kind of movies, multimedia, an early H3 government form, any kind of good stuff will be available. Maybe I also will actually try to go for a military push, maybe if I get the right cards. And if I draw a strong H3 tactic, or maybe a war, I could maybe also go in that direction. So I felt there are a lot of options that might be nice for me, and with that I was willing to skip the opera here in order to use the engineering genius, have even more resources available, and I also didn't want to skip building that cavalryman. I still have enough science to go into an H3 government form. That was important, that I leave myself open for that. I keep my event, the 2 colonization cards, and the House Tactic. I was quite happy about my first draw because I draw quite a bunch of events. Impact of Science could be very strong, and Impact of Colony is at least very much seedable, especially if I should win the autonomous territory. Iraq increases his population with the Frugality with the Silk Road bonus that allows him to increase his population yet again. He then takes Bach, elects Bach, takes the Patriotism, builds a Cavalryman, and builds a drama, or actually upgrades a drama from an HA lab to get an additional happy phase and goes up to 12 culture income. And now that we are at the beginning of H3, we can maybe take a quick look at the overview. So far the culture has been quite close, but now of course Iraq is getting Bach and is kind of running away with the culture. Maybe let's get this black production thing out of the way. And so culture-wise, Iraq is now at an advantage. Production-wise, I am not that bad. I mean, I lost now sadly the lab because of the terrorism, so science production-wise we are now quite equal. But I have a lot more resource income, lots more resources saved up, and that certainly gives me some options, or maybe is an advantage that can help me making up for the culture deficit that I will now soon have to overcome. But what might really be deciding in this position is when do I get an H3 government form. If I have to stay on despotism for quite a while longer, then regardless on how much more production I have, the civil action disadvantage might just be too big. If I ever get lucky and get an H3 government form early, maybe already at my next turn, then I might actually get quite a boost, and who knows, if I get fundamentalism, maybe I can go into a bit of a military push. If I get one of the other ones, I am maybe a bit more flexible and can maybe try to just also build up a lot of culture income. So I was now really hoping for some nice stuff for me to be revealed that I can invest into in order to stay competitive against Bach. And I see the impact of colonies, and I was so extremely relieved when I saw this copy of Democracy in the row. That's quite a bit lucky, quite a nice timing, and yeah, that will just is definitely a bit of a game changer for me. Out of the sudden, I felt a lot more comfortable again about my position. Not that I thought I'm in a clearly better position. I'm still playing against Bach, who is still running away with the culture, but now I felt like I can do some stuff. I can do some stuff, and I will have a very, very solid position after getting this democracy. I see the impact of colonies into the deck. I wasn't willing to commit to the impact of science yet, and rather went for the impact of colonies. Iraq, of course, got stronger, but maybe he was a bit afraid that I have seeded some strength events, and I just wanted to push, hoping that I might have a chance to, with at least the 2 colonization cards that I have, and Iraq having not that many draws because of being in low military actions. I was just hoping to see the colonies soon. Sadly, the event revealed is actually a strength event, so Iraq has committed to quite an influential event here, the Cold War, and the 6 additional science is certainly quite useful for him. I, this turn, after increasing my population with the ocean liner service, will of course take and develop the democracy. But then it's a bit of a question what to do with my remaining 4 civil actions. As you can see, there's a copy of movies on the row, and I really thought about if I should just take the movies, maybe build 1 or 2 more cavalrymen. If I build 2, that is enough to get me out of corruption, and maybe take 1 yellow card or something, and then I can start investing into movies at the next turn, guaranteed. If I take now a bunch of yellow cards, the movies fall down to 1 civil action for Iraq, and he might just deny those. I thought about just securing myself the movies, but while I have good resource income, if I don't take any of those yellow cards, or maybe only 1, those movies are still quite expensive, and I, at the end, was willing to not take them for 3, hoping that I get something else to invest into. Maybe a bit of a risk, but I also felt like I have the chance now to get some strong yellow cards. I mean, those are from H2, but still getting all of them for 1 civil action is quite strong, and I wanted to rather have those and was willing to take the risk of maybe at the next turn not having something nice to invest into. And with that, I actually built 2 cavalrymen. In order to get off corruption, first I thought I will build 1, reveal the tactic, but maybe it's nice to keep the fighting band tactic so that I can use it for colonization. If I'm winning the autonomous territory for just those 2 warriors, that would be really amazing. If I'm a bit lucky and draw maybe an H3 colonization card, that could be somewhat realistic. And Also, that gets me out of corruption. I don't reveal the tactic yet. I use my 3 military actions, and that allows me to have 4 civil actions now to take some cards. I thought about taking the revolutionary idea, but I have that one already in hand, which allows me to go into something like movies or multimedia at the next turn. And I just felt like I need even more the resources than the additional science. Iraq has also a bunch of science now with the Cold War. Of course, the revolutionary idea is still quite nice. Also, there might be Nobel Prizes at some point. Maybe I should take the revolutionary idea. I was also really not happy giving both engineering and revolutionary idea to Iraq. And maybe I should have just taken something like Wave, Urban Growth, and Revolutionary Idea. At the end, however, I decided to take Wave, Urban Growth, Reserves, and play the Revolutionary Idea. Not sure if that is correct. As said, maybe I should have just switched the Reserves into Revolutionary Idea. But then again, those H3 buildings that I soon want to invest into are very expensive, and having as many resources as possible felt quite strong. And what I also thought about, instead of playing the revolutionary idea, is to take the cannons, because if I should get the mechanized army tactic, or maybe also potentially the modern army and maybe a quick chance to get the modern infantry, then the cannons could maybe allow me to go for a bit of a military push. Iraq has the classic army, so I do need something strong to punish him militarily, but I have the magic castle to potentially sacrifice. But there are only 2 copies of the mechanized army tactic. I don't have a war yet. At the end, I decided to rather commit to a bit more of a peaceful line. Or maybe I can try something military heavy just with going for hussars, maybe using the tanks. It's just, I at the end wasn't willing to commit this one civil action. Soon maybe I need to take a wonder for expensive. The internet will actually be discarded. I didn't have a chance to take that one. But yeah, I might just need the civil actions elsewhere. Alright, so with that, that was my turn. I'm not totally certain. Maybe I should have taken the revolutionary idea, especially with Nobel Prizes being the game, with me having lost the lab. But if I just get movies and then later on multimedia, or the other way around, maybe first multimedia and then later on movies, maybe that's all that I need, with that military technology being enough to defend myself. I actually draw the modern army tactic and a war. So the cannons could have been very interesting, but it also depends very heavily on when I get the modern infantry, because now, if I don't get it quickly, I don't think I can commit really heavily into that direction, but who knows, it could have been now very interesting to have that option available. The impact of progress is also not looking bad. Of course, Iraq might now go for the engineering. He has a decent amount of science, sadly, with the Cold War now getting the revolutionary idea, so I have to be a bit careful with that, but at the moment it looks quite nice. Iraq upgrades the last lab into dramas, takes the reserves, the movies, the revolutionary idea, builds another cavalryman, and then interestingly takes the efficient upgrade. I found it interesting that he isn't going for the engineering, which still can maybe score him quite a bunch, or save him quite a bunch of resources, helps for some impacts. I have the impact of progress in hand, which of course he doesn't know, and that he rather goes for the efficient upgrade, which of course helps him with going for movies. Maybe he felt like it's a bit greedy investing the science into the engineering if he goes for movies at some point, and maybe he wants to go for chaplain, for example. And then he maybe also wants to go for air forces or military theory or something. Maybe he was a little bit afraid of what I could do militarily, and with that maybe he wasn't willing to go for the engineering, but I was happy to see it because that card has quite some potential. With taking that many cards, there are some interesting cards falling down for me, and I will actually have access to both multimedia and flaming for both 1 civil actions. The second copy of movies is sadly not available yet, but if it is available soon, that might be good enough for me. And with getting the multimedia, I was at this turn willing to commit to the impact of science. The freedom of movement is revealed. I was not sure if I should be happy about it being revealed now. I can now use it to put a warrior into cavalryman, that's what I will do. But I also thought it could have been quite nice to maybe, after I've gone for the multimedia, put an alchemy into multimedia. But it's still not bad for me. I can put a warrior into cavalryman. I then use the ocean liner service to increase my population. I take flaming, I elect flaming, I want to get a culture income going as quickly as possible, and also taking a look at Iraq's hand is of course not bad, doing that as quickly as possible. So I take flaming as a leader, I go for the multimedia, going up to 13 culture income, so I'm actually not that much behind Iraq at the moment. I have now only 2 less culture income, I'm only 10 culture behind, and I have already 2 quite decent impacts in there. Impact of colonies at the moment +3, impact of science hopefully +10. So I was thinking, it's not looking too bad how in the direction how this game is going. If I get the movies, then I get some really big culture income with Flaming. I still have the impact of progress in hand, which at least has the potential to be nice for me. Then I have 3 civil actions left, and I will decide to take the reserves and play those reserves already. Which I think is a fine call, because I really, in order to go for those expensive buildings and maybe also go for a wonder in addition to that, need as many resources as possible, and leaving the reserves for Irok so that he has more resources, especially with the Silk Road, feels quite bad. What I could consider here though is to go for the civil service. I have the impact of progress in hand, and it could really allow Irok to accelerate the game, and it might be a nice investment for him. But the reserves, I think, might also just be quite nice for him, and the civil service isn't really doing anything for me. I need my science to go for movies. It would just be a pure hate draft without any benefit for myself. And with that, I rather wanted to have the reserves, which also would be nice to have for Iraq, but which does a lot more for myself, and it also is available for civil action cheaper, so that I can play those reserves for resources at the end of my turn. And I also reveal the Hussars tactic to get stronger. I draw some cards, sadly no more impacts, but at least I have still the impact of progress in hand. Irok doesn't see it. He plays the patriotism with the Silk Road bonus, increases his population twice actually, or once, and then plays the reserves for food, so might increase his population again. He goes for the civil service, increases his population again, develops the movies with the discount from Bach, scores a Nobel Prize, and then uses the additional resources to actually go for 2 more units, and has now a second classic army tactic, still gets 3 draws, using the 2 military actions that he got from the Silk Road bonus quite nicely. And yeah, so he is again getting stronger. That could be a hint that there might be another strength event coming. I mean, he has committed to Cold War, there might be something else. But yeah, the question is how much can I play around that, because now getting stronger again is quite expensive. I could of course go for 2 more cavalrymen, but I have only 1 happy population at the moment, and it would distract me from maybe doing some other stuff. So at my turn, of course, Iraq then also goes for an upgrade to movies, going up to 17 culture income, has Nobel Prize, so he managed to now again have quite a bit of a culture lead. And now, of course, it was interesting, because I could do my first peek at Iraq's hand with Flaming. And when I saw the hand, was not certain if I should be happy or unhappy about what I saw. What I was happy about is Iraq has so far seeded no impact into the deck. And he also has only 1 single impact in hand, and that impact is the impact of balance, which he is somewhat limited for with the science income. I'm limited for with my food income, but if I know that it is in there, maybe I can build an additional farm or something, I can play around it, maybe a bit more easily even than Iraq can. And so I felt that I was happy about to see. He has only 1 impact, and that one is probably only a neutral, potentially even a bad impact for him. What I was not happy to see, first of all, he has that impact, and he has 1 intervention, which I have to be a bit careful about. And all of the rest of the cards are colonization cards. And that, again, I was not too happy to see, because the autonomous territory is coming, and he has 3 H3 defense cards and an H2 defense card, and with that can, without too much cost, go for quite a high bid. So I was a bit unhappy to see that. Despite Iraq getting stronger and potentially there being a strength event in the deck, I was still willing to push the impact of progress. Despite Iraq going for the civil service, it's still a better impact for me at the moment, and I just wanted to continue pushing. So I pushed that into the deck. And the autonomous territory is revealed, and as you can see, I'm able to win it. And I was willing to pay a lot for that, especially with the impact of colonies coming as well. Maybe a bit too much. I actually think I went all in. Maybe a bit too expensive. But I at the end was happy that it's just enough that I can win this for an army and my 2 cards, which I think is an acceptable price. It's expensive, but I have the wave of nationalism to rebuild, and so I was somewhat happy about that. I have now the additional actions. Now, of course, I had to think about what do I take from the autonomous territory, and as you can see, I took the additional resources. And it was a bit of a tough choice. I thought about a lot of different lines here. I thought about just building another multimedia, rebuilding my cavalryman, and maybe then I have to disband a warrior, and taking the Empire State Building. However, I felt a bit uncomfortable that if I have the Empire State Building lying around, maybe Iraq can just try to make that a bit worse for me. But then I felt maybe I can even just take and finish the Empire State Building, which is it's not the biggest wonder for me at the moment. I only gained 14 points, but 14 points are 14 points. And I don't have movies available, sadly, yet that I can invest into. I mean, I also don't have enough science for those, of course. But yeah, I felt like maybe I can get those 14 points, get closer to Iraq, and then I am prepared to maybe go for double wonder, and I'm prepared to take the fast food chains away. I also thought to not go for the Empire State Building at all, but it felt a bit bad. If then the fast food chains are revealed, I have not gotten any wonder anyway. So I kind of liked at the end the idea of finishing the Empire State Building already this turn, guaranteeing my amount of points that I get, and also making it that I'm prepared to just take the fast food chains away, and then together with my so far good impacts, things might not looking too bad. And then the question was, how do I do it with finishing the Empire State Building? Because I have to be careful. I'm now quite a bit behind in strength, and if I stay that much behind in strength, Iro can just deploy the armed intervention that he has in hand. It's at least good to know that he doesn't have any wars, and that he has very few draws. So I can be a bit greedy in my war defense, but I didn't want to invite an armed intervention from Iraq. I thought about taking the 7 cults from autonomous territory. I can still finish the Empire State Building, but I can't build 2 cavalrymen with the wave of nationalism and finish the Empire State Building then. And I then would only build 1 cavalryman. I thought about revealing shock troops, but I just would be in danger of getting hit by an aggression. And I at the end didn't want to risk that, and while I miss out on the 7 culture, at least the additional resources might also make it a bit easier for me to go for all of that investment, because finishing the Empire State Building and then maybe also going for fast food chains, or maybe also going for a bunch of movies and maybe also some impact preparation, maybe requires quite a bunch of resources. I was hoping that those resources will just generally be useful, and they allow me to finish the Empire State Building this turn while also rebuilding the cavalryman. It's of course a bit of a question if I should really finish the Empire State Building already this turn, because Iraq can't really overtake my science income. He could maybe build an additional iron mine and make it annoying for me to win the resource income, but even then I could just build a bronze mine, so the amount of points that I'm getting this turn I might also be able to get at the next turn, and maybe I could build a multimedia first. But it just felt somewhat good. Investing into the multimedia could be a bit bad, because if at the next turn movies are on the roll, I may want to go for movies. I am, with already having finished it, to spend even less civil actions to deny the fast food chains. It just at the end felt a bit better to not commit to another multimedia and finish the Empire State Building already this turn, which I then kind of need to do to get out of corruption. Because I am very low in happy faces, and I maybe rather want to build additional movies instead of additional multimedias. And in case I want to go for double wonder, then if I now commit to a multimedia, I very likely won't have enough resources to go for movies. Well, now I can maybe, depending on what yellow cards I get, make it that I can actually go for the fast food chains in addition to the Empire State Building and somehow still get the movies going. So at the end, I played a wave of nationalism, rebuilt my cavalryman. With that, with sacrificing, I am safe from armed intervention, and with playing the aggression, costing Iraq quite a bunch of draws, unless he goes for the military theory, which he might do. I thought that he wouldn't go for the aggression. I rebuilt a cavalryman, take the Empire State Building, play the reserves, build it for 14 points, and then take the reserves. And with that, I am at 103 points. I'm still slightly behind Iraq, but only slightly. I have the better impacts in there. Iraq only has the impact of balance in hand, and I might have still a shot to get the fast food chains. I make it that only 4 cards are revealed after my turn. And yeah, so I felt like it's still a close game, but I thought it's maybe fine how things are looking for me. And I felt even a bit better after my next draws, because I draw two very suitable impacts, and one of them might be very good, the impact of culture. Of course, for now, Erok is better in that, but he will lose Bach. He might replace him with Chaplain, but it still costs him a bit of culture income. And as soon as I might get a movies going, I should be able to have the bigger culture income, and then it's another very big impact in the impact of government, now that I've won the autonomous territory, who is quite important, not only because of generally it being useful, but also for the impact of colonies, now for the impact of government. And with that, and that is also a +3 impact for me at the moment. Iraq, of course, might go for the military theory, but it still would be a seedable impact at least. So I was very happy drawing those impacts. So that I was very happy about. What I was not happy about is that Iraq, after he seeded the impact of balance in, opens the politics of strength. So there is indeed another very influential strength event, and sadly, that gives him a lot of additional draws. So I had a lot of information about his cards, but now he has just 5 new cards, will maybe even draw some more cards at the end of his turn. And he has now maybe a lot of options that sadly I now don't have knowledge about again, which I was not too happy to see. And of course, I miss out on the next draws, and now I was extremely happy that I have already drawn those seedable impacts, because if I would have not drawn any good impact, now I would miss out on the draws. That would just be a disaster. But now, while it is still bad, and I could draw even better impacts than, for example, impact of government, but I have 2 seedable impacts, and I felt very thankful for that. What again might be a bit bad is sadly that the fast food chains are revealed for Erox, so he will be able to build those. The good news is that he doesn't have that many resources available, so he won't be able to do that much in addition to finishing those. And with me now also having impact of culture, I felt like maybe it's fine if he has those, if I can just completely focus on maximizing my culture income and the points that I score from impacts. Um, what Erog also does, which is interesting, is to take the professional spots here, and that is probably a pure hate draft, apart from it being a cheap technology for Nobel Prize. And I, of course, don't have any happy face solution. I still think that in order for Erog to do that, he needs some kind of card that helps him here. So after I saw that, I thought, well, he could have an impact of happiness, maybe an impact of population. And then there was one thing that I was especially afraid of, because with the last civil action, he actually makes sure to take the air forces. Maybe in order to be able to defend, actually. I don't know. But when I saw this, I also was very much afraid that he could have a hybrid war available. Because a normal war, now that he skips the military theory, for that he doesn't really have enough military actions. But if he has a hybrid war, then things could get quite dangerous for me with now having so many unhappy workers. And that of course would also be a reason why Iraq might be willing to deny the professional spots. Of course, denying those is maybe annoying for me anyway, but I want to go for movies, and if I then build a bunch of religions, maybe I'm somewhat fine with my happy faces. But if he has a hybrid war, that could be quite annoying. So I was quite a bit afraid of that. At my turn, I pushed already the impact of culture in. As we will see, the movies will be on the row, which I was very happy to see, that those are not very late in the deck, and that will allow me to already increase my culture income by quite a bit this turn. And I, with Erock now not having a lot of resources to invest into culture income because of having the fast food chains, I was very confident that I will be able to win the impact of culture. The impact of progress is revealed, which I win by +2. So it's still a fine impact, and you can see culture-wise we are quite close at the moment. I take and develop a movie. I take an urban growth, and then I had to think about this hybrid war, because what I kinda would like to do would just be to take another urban growth. But that leaves me quite vulnerable to a hybrid war. So I could also take now military build-up and patriotism, or maybe air forces, and no, I don't have enough science for air forces, but I could maybe even not build a movie, but I think I kinda have to do that. But I could take those 2 yellow cards and would have a lot more resources available for the military. But even then I felt... Alright, the recording accidentally stopped, so I will restart again. I think I was just talking about that even when I take the military build-up and the patriotism, I felt that a hybrid war would still be a bit annoying. And also, I generally didn't feel as comfortable about my position any longer, as when I maybe draw those two nice impacts, because now that Irok has gotten all the cards from the Politics of Strength, it's a lot more likely that he has maybe some good impacts to work with. He has gotten the fast food chains, and also there's still one card in the deck that he now will have a chance to get, sadly, the Endowment for the Arts, which together with the Silk Road might even score him 7 culture, and if it would be available for me in the row, I might take it away, even though there's a chance that maybe I won't be able to use it for myself. It would be a tough question whether I would take it, but it's still another source of culture income that he has access to. And with that, I came to the conclusion that I just can't play around the Hybrid War. It's only one card, and yeah, I rather decided to not play around it, especially because taking a second copy of the Urban Growth maybe allows me to play around another potential weakness, which is the impact of happiness. With Irok denying the professional sports, I thought it is definitely possible that he has maybe drawn the impact of happiness. And with an additional urban growth, I would be able to build an additional religion. I would be able to build one movie and 3 religions at my next turn, which would make it that the impact of happiness is actually somewhat decent for me, and at least not a very bad impact. And yeah, so I at the end decided to just go for the urban growth. I also thought about increasing my population normally once and maybe taking one of those cards, but if I increase my population normally now and with the ocean liner service, then if I increase it again at the next turn with the ocean liner service, I actually will have some famine issues, and I very likely won't have any excess resources to upgrade a farm, so that's not really a good thing to do anyway. And with that, I just increased my population with the ocean liner service and took the second urban growth to allow myself the option of just building a bunch of religions, in case that could make a difference for the impact of happiness. A lot will depend on my second peak with flaming on Irok's military cards. Then I will maybe again have knowledge about a potential impact. Irok, of course, there's a chance that he might now see an impact in that I don't have knowledge about, but then I can do some relatively concrete calculations because of all of the knowledge that I have so far. I have knowledge about all of the impacts that are coming. And yeah, then I think the second urban growth just gives me some more options and also takes maybe some options away from Irok. So that was my turn. I sadly won't draw any cards, but I am still able to defend thanks to the Himeji Castle. And now, of course, I was really hoping that there won't be a hybrid war, because if Irok has that card, I think that would just be an instant loss. Now that I haven't taken those resource yellows for the military, that would just be too big of a setback. But Irok doesn't have a hybrid war, or doesn't play it, but I think if he would have one, he would very likely play it. Instead, the impact of balance is revealed, which gives both of us the same amount of culture. Irok will this turn go for Chaplain, takes the endowment for the arts, the engineering genius, goes for an upgrade, takes the patriotism, and then plays the revolutionary idea, which will sadly allow him to go for a Nobel Prize at the last turn, so another 4 culture that he will be able to score. At the moment, he also has still a 4 culture lead, so he will get the fast food chains Nobel Prize, the endowment for the arts. I will get impact of science, impact of culture, and a 6 points impact of colonies. I have this 3-point impact of government in my hand, and I will significantly increase my culture income at my last turn, so that I have in my last turn a lot more culture income than Irok will have, because Irok will now use almost all of the resources in the fast food chains. He will be able to build 1 more military unit with the patriotism for 1 more point for the fast food chains. And now was the moment when I could take another peek at Irok's hand, and I was somewhat happy about what I saw, because he has only 1 impact in hand, and that impact is the impact of architecture. He has 1 aggression in hand, and that is the Occupy, but I can make it that I can defend against an aggression, just barely, because if I seed now 1 card in the deck, now that I haven't drawn any cards at my last turn, I have only 5 cards left, and that's just enough. 5 cards plus 3 from the Cavalryman plus 3 from the Himeji Castle bonus is just enough to defend myself. And now, of course, I started by seeding the impact of government. That's the thing that I have to do, there's no alternative. The impact of science is revealed, which gives me plus 10, so if I would have taken endowment, it very likely wouldn't have given any culture to myself because of my good impacts. Alright, and now I could do a lot of calculations. And the first thing that, of course, I wanted to check is if I just build a bunch of religions and 1 movie, if the one card that I don't have knowledge about is the impact of happiness, would I win or would I lose? And the answer is I would lose. So with that in mind, I decided that I can't play around an impact of happiness. And with not playing around it, I decided that it is better, instead of building 3 religions, to just build 2 movies. Especially considering that Erok has the impact of architecture in hand, because if I only build 1 movie, Erok could still seed that impact into the deck, and it would give him -1 in the evaluation, but he gets 3 culture for seeding, so he could generate +2 additional culture by seeding that impact. Now that I have built a second movies, I not only just have 1 more culture income, I also make it that Erok can't play the impact of architecture into the deck. So that just felt like the best thing that I can really do. And then I went through all the impacts that and saw which impacts, if I go for such a turn, would make it that Erok wins the game. And first I thought there are 2, but there are actually 3 impacts. One impact that would make Erok win is the impact of strength. That's the best impact that he could have. And the impact of happiness would let him win as well. And then there's an interesting thing about the impact of population, which is a little bit worse now compared to when I would have gone for the religions, but the additional culture and the thing that Erok can't see the impact of architecture make it that I can't really play around the impact of population as well. But the thing is, now that Erok can't see this impact of architecture into the deck, he can still play the Occupy, and I, in order to defend against it, have to sacrifice a cavalry unit. And only because of that sacrifice, the impact of population is also good enough. So the 2 points that I lose for a potential impact of population by sacrificing the cavalryman will make it that that an impact of population would be good enough for Erok to win. And around all of those impacts, if I play around the impact of happiness, it's just not good enough. I can't play around the impact of population better, and the impact of strength also I can't really play around. That would be way too much of a sacrifice, or I also just don't have enough really resources, and Erok can with the patriotism build another unit, so that's just not really a possibility. So I can't really play around the impacts that I would lose against. I can just go for that best turn that I have available and just hope that the politics of strength didn't give Erok one of those 3 impacts. I was not too optimistic, because Erok taking the professional sports for 3, now that he didn't have a hybrid war available, I just felt like that could be a sign for impact of happiness, but who knows, maybe he just wanted to deny it generally, and so I had still some hopes left, but I am at the mercy of what impact Erok has drawn. But at least I have now those 28 points from my culture income, which are important, so that only those impacts are. There are actually some impacts that would lead in a tie, like impact of technology, but the tie is good enough for me. Erok indeed goes for the Occupy. I have to sacrifice a cavalryman. He plays the endowment, sadly, for 7 points because of the Silk Road. He then develops 2 technologies, gets Nobel Prize. Sadly, he was able to get 2 Nobel Prizes, while I didn't get a single Nobel Prize, so that of course also didn't go ideally for me. Maybe also partly because of the alchemy that got blown up with the terrorism, or maybe otherwise, who knows, I could have been able to go for a Nobel Prize, or I could have, of course, maybe also played it a bit differently. Erok can finish the fast food chains for 23 points after building another cavalryman, and then we can see before the final impacts that Erok has quite a bit of a lead, 15 points. But an impact of culture is still coming. Impact of colonies, I think, is also wasn't revealed yet. So I have some good impacts, but yeah, as I said, there are 3 impacts that would win Erok the game from now on. The first impact is the impact of colonies, so I get closer to Erok in the standings. There's the impact of government that I've seeded at my last turn. It gives me +3 against Erok. I was quite happy that despite losing to the politics of strength, I had all of those impacts to seed, so my impact draws for myself certainly were quite favorable. I am now 6 points behind Erok. There is still an impact of culture coming, which would make it that I'm 4 points in front of Erok, and now it depends on what impact Erok has. And as you can see, he sadly has indeed the impact of happiness. That was what I feared with him taking the professional sports away. and he gets +10 from that impact, and I get again +10 from the impact of culture, but it makes it that Irok at the end is able to win this game by a 6 culture lead, so quite a close game. But sadly, yeah, he was able to make it and is able to win this game. So congratulations to him. Of course, we have taken a look at the standings at the beginning of the video, so you know that that not only means him winning the game, but also he is able to win the group. And sadly, I have to go to the lower bracket. So also congratulations for Irok and for being able to win the group. It was quite a close game. I think it was a game where we saw why it is quite a bit risky to go into H2 without having any government form available. I just feel a lot more comfortable being already on monarchy, or maybe having some additional civil action sources, maybe being on theocracy. At least I had a code of laws with 5 civil actions. It is somewhat fine what you can do, but yeah, the governments were taken away, and it could have gotten a lot worse for me if the H3 government forms would have a different timing. I think I actually then got quite lucky that the democracy was available so early, and that brought me back in the game. And I also had some good impacts draw, so in H3 I think things actually went quite nicely for me. Irok, I think one thing that maybe pulled him ahead was that he was able to get quite some nice value out of the events that he seeded. The terrorism was extremely close, but blew up the alchemy, which cost me some science income, and then he managed to win those 2 influential strength events, the Cold War maybe allowing him to go for an additional Nobel Prize, and the politics of strength probably giving him the impact of happiness. So and removing an opportunity from me to maybe get an even better impact. So I think it was that was one important part, that he managed to get some nice value out of those events. I at least was able to win the autonomous territory, but it was somewhat expensive. I think it was still worth it for that price. Probably I shouldn't have gone all in. That maybe would have been too expensive. But that of course was something that I got a little bit of value out. And at the early game, I see those crusades into the deck that I lost, and that culture swing would have been already enough. Of course, I drew some cards with Eleanor, which also resulted in additional culture with Eleanor, and so it's hard to say if that really would have made a difference, but yeah, just maybe a reminder that those crusades shouldn't be taken too lightly. And also with the Empire State Building and how I played it, I'm not certain. Maybe should have tried to keep it, maybe try to make it bigger, and just ignored that Irok can maybe get a fast food chains. Maybe I could have still tried to. I could have still finished the Empire State Building maybe and taken the fast food chains away. So finishing that directly during the turn, I voiced some arguments why I wanted to go for it, and those are also somewhat valid, but looking back at it, I'm also not completely certain if that was the correct play to just finish the Empire State Building. And yeah, so at the end, quite a close game. It was quite exciting. Fleming gave me a lot of information, but I had that one impact that I didn't have knowledge about, and at the end it just depended all on what impact that would be. And sadly, it was the impact of happiness. But as I said, I feared it after Irok has taken the professional spots away. Alright, with that we are at the end of the game, and now of course that all games have finished, we can take a look at the final standings of the group. Alright, and here we have the final standings, and you can see it was extremely close, Irok being now 1 point ahead of me, and the last deciding game, yeah, there were 6 culture missing for me in order to win the group, but sadly I didn't have those 6 cultures, so I am now at the 2nd position. And we'll have to continue in the lower bracket, same as last year. So I was really hoping that I could stay in the upper bracket in this year's World Championship for a little bit longer. But I got some tough opponents, and yeah, Irok played quite well, and at the end managed to, yeah, with the last 2-player game, take the group, lead in the group, and win the group. And generally, he has quite a nice run at the moment in the current Intermezzo Championship season that I'm also playing against him. He managed to win all 3 games from the first batch of games. So yeah, I think when I introduced him at the beginning of the stage, and when we took a look at his last year's World Championship performance, I was surprised to see that he went out quite early in a group and relatively not really close, with quite a bit of a gap. And so I thought that maybe Irok has over the last year quite improved, and maybe he is also still in quite improving at the moment. I mean, of course, all of the players, of course, try to improve, but at least for me, when I started playing the game, I really felt some big progress on how I improve, and now I hope, of course, that I still am a bit improving, but at some point you maybe reach a little bit of a skill plateau, and where you don't make very big steps any longer. But who knows? Maybe Irok hasn't reached that yet. Maybe he's still very quickly improving. At least the last results that we have seen from that from him might suggest that. So again, congratulations to him for being able to win the group. Good luck for him in the upcoming rounds. And now I will have to go to the lower bracket, MV as well. For MV, I think the stage went a bit unfortunately. I think there were some games that went unlucky for him. Also in that 1 4-player game, the resignation of Tim and me getting 3 additional instead of only 1 additional resource from Maria Theresa made a big difference. And then generally, I think there were some unlucky moments for him. He redeemed himself a bit so in the last 2-player games. Sadly, if I would have won against him, I also would have won the group. But he, despite already almost being out of contention, or at some point being out of contention, still played very nicely, showed some nice sportsmanship, and got those 2 wins in the 2-player game, and with that is not that far away in the standings, so has somewhat redeemed himself. And of course he as well will continue in the lower bracket of the next stage. For Tim, I actually don't know it, if that withdrawal is completely out of the if he is out of completely of the tournament, or if he will continue in the lower bracket of the next stage. I don't know that, so I can't say anything to that. And yeah, so with that, in the next stage, you will see me in the lower bracket of the World Championship, and I hope that I won't be eliminated at this point like I was in the last year's World Championship. I hope that I will have be able to start a little bit of a lower bracket run. I hope it was interesting for you to follow me along in this interesting group. And yeah, I would say then we are at the end of the video. I will have to see what videos I will be doing next. Maybe I will also do a little bit of a break, as I also have a bit of stuff to do in real life at the moment. And yeah, but then there will at some point definitely be some videos again, at the latest when the next World Championship stage has begun, but probably also before. And yeah, so I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.